Top of the morning to everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Let's go. Woo. I'm feeling good this morning, everybody. I hope you've had an amazing week. An amazing week. I am fired up today. We're coming off of a conference here in Nashville last night called 7 Minutes of Impact. And I want to just kick it off real quick before we introduce our amazing guest and tell you a little bit about how I had to figure some stuff out to pull this conference off. We had over 125 people in the building here at Music City Work Club. It was absolutely amazing. And this concept, this idea, 7 minutes of impact, seven speakers, 7 minute talks, 125 people in the room. Guess what, y'all? This idea, this concept, this was born over 2 years ago. It took me 2 years to take an idea and turn it into a reality. And the reason why I want to share that with you is because this conference that I put on, this event, I had more people come up to me than I ever have at any speaking engagement, any conference, any interaction, whether I was keynoting, whether I was emceeing, whether I was doing a workshop or a breakout room. And I was thinking this morning, before we introduce our guest, I was thinking about this. I'm like, the biggest lesson here for me, the biggest lesson that I wanted to gift you and share with you today. Remember when I said it took 2 years to pull this thing off? Some of the best things, some of the most amazing things we can create take time. They take resources, they take ideation, but most importantly, they take the right people. This project for me, this was a who. Who can help me pull it off? This wasn't a how. I've done multiple conferences. I've put 500 people in a room. I've done small dinners, intimate settings. I've spoken at conferences of thousands of people. But it took 2 years to make this a reality. So when I was thinking about figuring it out, I'm like, well, I just had to figure something out that took 24 months. And funny enough, how God works, this 7 minutes of impact, I bought this domain 2 years ago. 3 weeks ago, I went into my GoDaddy account where I buy all my domains, and I went to renew a couple, right? realjimmorris.com, my personal domain. I own a domain called Reputation Builder, humantouchmarketing.ai, creativevibemarketing.ai, right? I've got some other domains I'm sitting on. And I don't put any of my domains on auto renew, right? Because I'm that crazy guy who owns a bunch of domains and has a bunch of ideas. And none of these were on auto renew. I thought I let 7minutesimpact.com expire. Come to find out, 7minutesimpact.com was the only domain on auto renew for 2 years. Sometimes I can figure stuff out. Sometimes people around me will help figure stuff out. But when you have a passion, when you know an idea is on your heart, it's on your soul, sometimes it figures it out for you. Sometimes you get those winks, those pushes, those nudges. Sometimes it's so in your face, you have to take action. And as I was thinking this through, I'm like, okay, we've got this age of AI. We've got this age of information. We've got all these things going on. And I had an idea to put 7 speakers on stage for 7 minute talks to create impactful insights rather than information overload 2 years ago. And now this thing comes about. So I just wanted to share that with you before we introduce our amazing guest and one of my business partners, Chase Geiser. And the last thing I want to say before we kick this off, and this is something that I would write down. This is something that I would think about when I'm talking about information, I'm talking about focusing on those insights. This is an insight. And I heard this about a year ago. I can't recall. This isn't Jim Morris created. Someone else had told me this. They said, Jim, the day you don't know what you're doing or you're stuck is the day that you begin to create. The day you don't know what you're doing or you're stuck is the day you begin to create. Put a 5 in the chat if that resonates with you. Put a 5 in the chat if that's something where you're like, whoo, whoo, okay, all right. We're getting started this morning on this Figure It Out Friday. 5s, 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 5s. Let's go. Let's go. All right. I'm a talker. I love communication. I love human connection, but I'm gonna zip this one up real quick because we got Chase Geiser. He is a business partner of mine with Human Touch Marketing. He is a very unique individual. I call him a secret genius. I also think he could perform Netflix stand-up comedy. He does some amazing things in the podcast world. He does some amazing things on the digital marketing side. He's a ghostwriter. He's finishing up a couple books right now. He's helped me with my book. And this is a gentleman that has had a very interesting life, has navigated some scenarios where he really had to figure it out. And I'm going to let him share some of those stories. And I've got 1 or 2 questions I'm going to dig in and ask him as we navigate. Can you give a 10 in the chat for Chase Geiser showing up this morning, getting on the mic? He's in the studio looking all fly. Throw a 10 in the chat, please. And let's give him some energy. Please welcome Chase Geiser.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with everybody here in this chat. I'm a huge fan of Jim. Obviously, he's my business partner, and I'm a huge fan of Brock as well. Just an insanely good person, incredibly talented. So it's an honor and a pleasure to be sitting here speaking to this group. I've seen Jim wake up early in the morning to be on these calls from the very chair that I'm in. And I think ultimately that's what it takes in order to be successful. It's what it takes in order to accomplish your dreams and your goals and your ambitions. And it's particularly interesting for me to be talking to you in this group because many, if not all of you, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, are realtors. And I always thought real estate was an interesting business because I'm somebody who sort of came of age during the crash of 2008. Many of you might remember that, whether you were a realtor at the time or not. But I remember the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times of what happened in 2008. It was this massive economic collapse, this massive struggle. People were foreclosing on their houses like crazy. It was an economic crisis. And of course, the banks got bailed out. We understand that not a single person in the United States was actually arrested for crashing the entire economy, despite how corrupt everything was that led up to that event. But we were in this position as a civilization, as a society back in 2008, where we had like this burgeoning, this renaissance of the internet. Facebook was new and it was hot and social media was popping off. And it seemed like the world was finally going to be connected in some way that wasn't going to create problems, but in a way that was going to create opportunities. And it was true and it wasn't at the same time. And I remember seeing people. I was 18 years old in 2008, and I have an older brother who was 25. He was a painting contractor, and it was a crazy business to be in at the time. He made his money because he went down during Hurricane Katrina as like a 20-year-old kid and painted all of the area that was affected by that disaster. He was the first one. He was rolling in with the National Guard, and it was a crazy time. There was massive looting. You could walk into a Home Depot and basically take whatever you wanted. But while all the other painting contractors were struggling, while all the other realtors were struggling to make ends meet. This is a 20-year-old kid that's dropping out of college and he's making $50,000 a week repainting a town that was entirely flooded because nobody else had the audacity to roll in with a National Guard with a bucket of paint in the back of their truck. And so the point I'm trying to make here is we're in a similar time for real estate right now. It's not 2008 bad yet. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if this year is going to be the year that the entire industry comes back and the interest rates finally go down enough that, and the prices go down enough that you can feel like you can move more inventory and just and get a breath of fresh air. But the reason I want to bring up 2008 and compare it to today is because y'all in real estate have been going through a dark time. And some of you have found a way to be successful during that time. Some of you have found a way just to eke by. A lot of people in 2008 that were in the real estate business were living off credit cards for like 2 years, just racking up debt. And then boom, there was a boom. You pay it off. You can scale and you can expand. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we're about ready to enter into a time where everyone that was weak in the industry will quit and they'll do something else. They'll give up. They'll get a sales position at a corporation. They'll shut down their little LLC. They'll keep their license so that they can tell people at networking events that they're still a realtor and they'd be happy to help. And they don't want to have the embarrassment of failing in the industry. They'll do all the things that people do in order to mitigate the pain or discomfort or reputation damage of a massive economic problem that's impacting your industry. But then there's going to be an elite class of people in this space, just like other industries that have struggled over time, an elite class of people in this space that survive. You know, and I talk a lot about politics in my personal content. And there's obviously been a lot of conflict between Russia and the United States of America over the course of the last 50, 60, or 70 years. I don't want to be political on this podcast, but one of the things that I love about the Russian culture is that it's a people that is incredible at surviving, whether it's the harsh weather conditions, whether it's Operation Barbarossa from World War II, whether it's any number of the different travesties that have befallen that nation, that people over the course of the last thousands of years. They always survive. But for some reason, I don't know what's going on, but culturally, for some reason, they've had a hard time figuring out how to thrive. They can survive, but they can't thrive. Culturally, there's something going on there that I'm not expert enough to define or explain. The United States, we have exactly the opposite problem. We're a baby country. We're only 300 years old. Many of your businesses are only a few months old or a few years old. And we've never really had to struggle with survival, maybe a little bit during the Great Depression, 1929 through the 30s. But we have figured out how to thrive. And we're almost complementary to the Russian culture. They can survive, but not thrive. We can thrive, but everything seems so fragile and vulnerable all the time because there's so much disruption and innovation in our capitalist civilization. The point I'm trying to make is lean into that. Don't be thinking in a survival mindset. Be thinking in a thriving mindset. Don't let all of the excuses like, hey, artificial intelligence is coming in and I don't even know if I'm going to be relevant in 6 months because everybody's just going to talk to their AI about whatever house deal there is. And there's going to be for sale by owner and people are going to be buying without a realtor. They're going to be trying to figure everything out with artificial intelligence. And am I really smart enough? Am I young enough? Am I good looking enough? Am I charming enough? Am I networked enough in order to survive in this business? It's like, fuck that, guys. Figure out how you can thrive. And I don't want to be cliche here and say, hey, Grant Cardone says, make your goals 10x, whatever your actual goal is. That way, if you only meet 5x your goal, it's still 5 times better than what you were going to do in the first place. But do that. Actually do that. And I started my first business in 2016. So I graduated from college in 2014. And I worked for a guy who owned 60 Sprint mobile stores. Another interesting story. This is somebody who did over $100 million in business 3 years in a row, just as a franchise of Sprint Mobile before it was acquired by T-Mobile. And there was this massive T-Mobile acquisition, and he had to sell all of his locations. So he's somebody that had a business that was worth over $100 million, or doing over $100 million rather in sales for 3 years in a row. He's got to let it go for $8 million. I mean, I was always told when I was hanging out with the NBAs at Vanderbilt who would try to sneak into a Belmont party, to hang out with the kids from the other side of the tracks. I was always told, I was always under the impression that a business was worth 3 to 5 times its annual revenue. And I can't imagine going from the mindset of, hey, this business is worth $300 million to, hey, I got to let it go for 8. Many of you have probably engaged contracts like that in the real estate business. But during that time, from 2014 to 2016, when I was working for this business, I was massively learning digital marketing as quickly as possible. It's 2014, 2016. My responsibility working for this company that owns 60 Sprint stores was to get as many leads generated for the stores as possible, so everybody that was working the floor could call those leads, get them in the store, and convert them. We tracked everything. That's how I got my chops in digital marketing. I decided in 2016 to quit my job because the clients that I had between 5 to 9 p.m. were paying me more than the job was paying me from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Actually, it was 8 to 5 because I would come in an hour early. And I had $800 in the bank. Back then, my mortgage was, I think, $1,300 a month because you could actually buy a house for $210,000 in Nashville, Tennessee in 2016. Right, 15 minutes from downtown. Impossible. Now, it was a 1928 house. But my mindset was always not just survival, it was thriving. Embracing this ideal of prosperity, not just getting by, not just making ends meet, not just trying to mitigate risk, but seize opportunity. Everyone's always focused on the risk. It's like everybody always fears the devil, and you're really supposed to fear God. They're like afraid of this risk.
Woo.
Woo, yes.
And I remember it was 2019. I'd moved to California to follow my girlfriend, who's now my wife. She wanted to move back home. And I'm living in the cheapest apartment in the nicest county in perhaps the United States of America. It was like $3,000 a month, and it was renovated in the 80s, and the paint was chipping off of the bathtub. And I'm running this marketing company, and I'm hustling, running this marketing company. And there's good months and there's bad months, and there's that ebb and that flow that it's almost like manic. It's bipolar. It's the best part about being in a business because it activates the secret genes that lay dormant until you feel a tremendous amount of stress. And I remember my BMW that I bought in order to fit in Orange County, California. It was 2 years used, least expensive BMW I could get, but it was a BMW. I traded a Nissan Versa in for it that was totally paid off. Just did the dumbest financial decision. Dave Ramsey would have smacked me in the mouth if he would have seen what I did. I remember watching my BMW get repossessed in 2019 from my apartment window. And I told my wife, girlfriend at the time, that that somebody must have called in to be towed as like I just like made up some lie. Like, it's because I had the neighbor's car towed last week. They're just getting revenge on me and having my car. It was getting repossessed. 2 years later, I was the top 1% seller on Fiverr. I did $500,000 in sales just on Fiverr as a freelancer for digital marketing. And I haven't really had time or even enough hindsight. I know it was like 7 years ago to garner all of the wisdom from that experience. But what I can say is the entire time I was thinking about how great it would be if I was making $50,000 a month, not how badly I needed $5,000 a month. You know what I mean? I was thinking about how great it would be to be able to travel anywhere and work from anywhere and build up a team and be able to delegate these tasks and build a dream and focus on things that I wanted to. I wasn't worried about how I was going to cover my nut. And it's so easy in an age of scarcity and uncertainty. When scarcity is married to uncertainty, the only answer is faith. I mean, Jesus said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And when I pray, I modestly say oftentimes, especially when I'm in moments of desperation, that, hey, Father, my faith is the size of a mustard seed. And it's a knock because it's like, I'm losing faith right now. But at the same time, it's a call to action for God. I'm like, you said if I had faith the size of a mustard seed, that I could move mountains. That's what you said. You sent your son here, and that's what you said. And I'm telling you right now, my faith is no bigger than a mustard seed, but by God, it is the size of a mustard seed. I don't know if you've ever seen a mustard seed, but it's like a little itty bitty speck. It's a teeny tiny seed. And that's how you move mountains. And so you have to walk in to every opportunity that you have, like you're listening to Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, where he says, I stand up next to a mountain and I chop it down with the edge of my hand. Because everybody out there that leans into this scarcity mindset, this lack of faith mindset, this doubtfulness, this AI is going to take over, whatever BS, there's no opportunities. Nobody wants to sell. The prices are 20% over what they should be. I can't get the appraisals to match. They're all going to fall like flies, and you're going to be the only ones left, and you're going to take everything that you want. You know, there's a story about when Napoleon invaded Russia. And forgive me, my history knowledge is not what it should be, not what it used to be. But I think it was St. Petersburg that was the capital at the time, not Moscow. I don't even know. I can't remember which town it was. But Napoleon goes to invade the capital of Russia, and it's empty. The Russians knew he was coming, and they just changed their capital. So he walks in, he's like, I did this whole campaign for what? An empty city, literally just a totally empty, massive city. That's what's going to happen in real estate. You're going to show up and you're going to be the only realtors left. And you're going to have every single opportunity. You just have to make sure that you have faith the size of a mustard seed. And yes, there's going to be tactics. There's going to be tricks. There's going to be hacks. There's going to be little things you can do. Oh, I'm using OpenClaw, and it's making me figure out who I should call next. Or I'm analyzing the market and figuring out that this area is actually the best value for the money. Or there's a Starbucks that just got put in here. So that means that in 3 years, on average, the value of this home is going to be worth $300,000. You're going to figure out every single angle. You're going to figure out every single opportunity, and you're going to be the only ones left. So I am here to congratulate you for being in the toughest industry to be in right now. I'm here to congratulate you for being in an industry that's one of the easiest ones to get into and one of the hardest ones to stay in. Because if you choose to just stick it out, if you choose to watch your car, the metaphor now, get repossessed, as you dream about $50,000 a month or $100,000 a month, you're going to be the only one that had the courage, the balls, for lack of a better term, to do it. And you're going to have everything left, and you're going to move that mountain. So my lesson to you, in my short career, I'm only 35 years old, but I've been in business for myself 12 years. My lesson to you is to love the pain. Love the scarcity, love the struggle, love the fact that maybe you only sold one house last year. Because there's a concept in science. I briefly teased it at the beginning of this conversation. There's a concept in science, epigenetics. We have genes that are the reason we look the way that we look. They're the reason that we have the mannerisms that we have, many of the personality traits that we have. You can argue about nature versus nurture. There's a combination. There's a hybrid, of course. But there's no doubt that our genes are fundamentally just massively influential in the type of people that we become and what we experience and how we handle it. But what a lot of people don't know, they think that we have all these genes and all the genes are just fired up like floodlights. They're just always lit. All your genes are happening at once. That is the Jackson Pollock of your life. It's just your genes splattered on the canvas, and that's who you are. What they don't understand is that our genes are more like a light show than a spotlight. Different lights come on at different times based on what our needs are. Maybe we're exposed to something in the environment. It activates these genes that trigger a response to it. Maybe we're incredibly happy, and so it activates these genes. Maybe we're incredibly sad, so it activates these genes. Our genes are turning on and off. They're firing up and turning themselves off all the time throughout our entire life. And when you are under a massive amount of stress, when things are really hard, different genes are activated. It's our warrior mode. It's our warrior fight mindset or flight if you're that type of person. And that's an incredible opportunity. Because what happens is you get successful, you get comfortable, those genes shut down, okay, everything's cool, and then you start to slip. Then you start to not respond as quickly. You start to not hustle as quickly. You start to shed the clients that aren't paying you as much because you got these fat ones over here, and your reputation erodes like a rock against the ocean. But you folks are in an opportunity right now in this industry where you have to seize the epigenetic response to crisis, to scarcity, to fear, to doubt. Your mind, your spirit, I know you can feel it because I can feel it too. It's uncomfortable, but I love it. It's uncomfortable as hell, though. They understand that the future is uncertain and the end is always near. These genes, they understand that we're in a high stress, highly competitive environment right now with just total doubt. The future, the dark side is clouded the future. And they are waking up and they're telling you what to do. And you have to lean into that tiny voice that is now turning into a scream, because your body, your mind, and your soul are changing, whether you know it or not. And they're telling you exactly what to do. It's the reason that you're on this call at 7:15 in the morning with a bunch of competition. It's the reason that several of you have the phone planted on your dashboard as you're driving to the next opportunity, because you want to be here, but you got to be somewhere else too. That hustle is awakening to you, and hang on to that. Never let it go away. Always maintain that scarcity starvation mindset. Be hungry, be an animal, be a lion, because everybody else is going to be a sheep. And then what comes on the other side is that mountain moved. And this is why we're entrepreneurs. This is the human condition for people that make their own way, that make their own path. It's taking on the risk and the doubt and staring into the abyss and wondering whether or not you're good enough, and saying, you know what? I don't even care whether I'm good enough, because at least when I die, I can say that I tried when everyone else says I never tried anything. At least I can say that I failed when everybody else was too scared to fail. And so that's what I leave you with. I don't have any tips or tricks or insight as to what you need to do for the next 7 days in order to accomplish whatever you need to accomplish in the business that you're in. I can't tell you what tools to use, what AI to use, what prompts to use, what calls to make, how to deal with the 7 most common objections to somebody that wants to sell their house, or somebody that wants to keep the price up even though they're trying to sell their house for way more than it's worth in the market. I can't tell you those tactics, but what I can tell you is a mindset. What I can tell you is a strategy. Never take no for an answer. Always lean in. There's a poem I want to leave you with before we get back to Jim. I don't know that if I've gone long enough. I can go a few more minutes if I need to, Jim. But it's
I want
Invictus.
you to let it rip, bro. Come on, let's
All
land
right.
this plane. Let it rip. I'm ready to go, baby. I'm fired up over here. Come on, Chase. Let it rip.
There's a poem called Invictus that I had to memorize it in college for a poetry class. I hope I still have it memorized. And it goes, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And right now, if you're feeling like I'm feeling, it's not something I believe, it's just something I feel. You might feel like a very small fish in a giant sea. You might feel irrelevant. You might feel like you're caught in the tide or the undertow, and there's these massive disruptions that are taking place. I know every day I feel behind, and I don't even try to catch up, because I know that tomorrow, whatever's hot today in the AI world is going to be irrelevant, because the technology is speeding by so quickly. But sometimes it does feel around here like I felt when I visited New York City for the first time. I remember just being in a sea of people in New York City. I only went one time. And I felt so irrelevant. I went from coming from a small town where I was one of 80 people in my graduating class to visit to New York City, where I thought I was going to see art and culture and all the bright lights, and it was going to be so amazing. And I wound up just feeling like I didn't matter, because I saw how many other people there actually were. But the fact of the matter is, you have to realize that it's not about who you are relative to other people. It's about who you are relative to yourself. And I know that's a cliche, and I know motivational speakers like to say that, but ultimately what we have in our culture, the problem that we have in our culture in so many of our industries, is we have a massive lack of self-esteem problem. We have a culture and a civilization that's been just radicalized by social media to be this way, that just leans into the superficial and the vain. And all of our self-esteems have a tendency to be defined by how we believe others perceive us. This is the trap. This is the void. I don't know if you've had this experience, guys, but you ever go back and look at the most popular kid in high school, see what they're doing now? A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times these people aren't exactly the beacons or the bastions of success and impressiveness 20 years after high school. And it's because what happens is we're young, maybe we're a little bit more good looking than somebody else, maybe we're a little smarter than somebody else, maybe we're a little bit more talented in athletics than somebody else. None of these things true of me, but of this class of people I'm talking about. And they get this self-esteem by this perceived praise of others, this perceived acceptance of the others at a young age in the high school environment. And they learn to build their self-esteem, their self-identity on how other people see them, treat them, and feel about them. And when they're young, that's good enough because they're only getting positive feedback. It's great. You can just lean. You can outsource your self-esteem when you're young. You've got things going for you. And then what happens is they get older and they're no longer an athlete anymore. They're no longer as good looking anymore. They're not as smart as they thought that they were or whatever. And they stop getting that positive feedback that they became accustomed to when they were teenagers. And then there's no self-esteem from within there. There's no sense of identity from within there. And then they struggle and they collapse. I mean, they take on drinking too much, or they get overweight or out of shape, or they have like a number of divorces and affairs and things like, whatever, problems that we have or struggles that we're all inclined to struggle with, but they don't wind up as successful as maybe you thought that they were going to be in high school. And it's because we conditioned these people at a young age to source their self-esteem externally. But if you find a way to source your self-esteem from within, to have a sense of confidence and comfort with yourself, regardless of what anybody else may think of you or think of what you think or think of what you do, this is the mentality that will set you up for indefinite success no matter what happens externally in the industry that you're in. If we had a civilization that genuinely invested in and believed in self-esteem from within, self-worth from within, not from without, not this you go girl stuff or power or fear stuff, or you don't need to hear any positive feedback from anybody because you have decided that you accept yourself and that you're good enough. And it's nice when somebody says something nice. Of course, you're polite and you say thank you, but deep down, you don't really give a shit because you already love yourself. And when somebody else gives you a hard time, on the other hand, or when your business isn't doing as well as you thought it was going to do, you don't let it shake you or rock you because you don't care what anybody else thinks. It's not because you're callous or because you're a sociopath or because you have no empathy for other or respect for other people. It's just because you understand that you have this inherent self-worth. And frankly, I think that so much of the political problems that we have in the world, not in the United States specifically, but in the world as a whole, throughout history and not just even today, is because we have a leadership class that really has no sense of self-worth or self-esteem. And so they have to get the power and the control externally in order to feel that they're even alive. You think of like a Kim Jong-un, for example, in North Korea, famously a dictator, just won a re-election with 100% of the vote, which we know, of course, is impossible. I mean, it's a situation over there. And this is somebody who probably doesn't really have any self-esteem, probably shrouded in just total fear of a coup constantly. He's had to have members of his family assassinated over the years in order to mitigate these coups from happening. He's got to have 100% of the vote. Otherwise, there must be executions. This is a mentality of a terrified person, and a terrified person will exert as much control over as many other people as possible in order to feel like they have some sort of a substance in a terrifying situation and a mindset that they've allowed themselves to be in. We see this in business too. It's not just among obscure dictators of small countries on an island. We see people that lack self-esteem, perhaps they're narcissistic, that constantly need the reinforcement of others. They need to leech off of others or drink from the nectar of others. They need people to be under them that they can subordinate, that they can control. They need to be perceived as the master of their industry. I remember I saw a talk one time at the Entrepreneur Center here in Nashville. I can't even remember who gave it, but it was some rapidly, massively successful entrepreneur came in to give a talk on, startups. And it was all when 0 to 1 came out by Peter Thiel. And it was all about, everybody's talking about minimum viable products. And there's an app for that. There's an app for that was going on at the time. And I remember there's a Q&A section. I got to ask the guy, I was like, what is the biggest mistake in business that you've ever made? And the guy responded and said, I've never made a mistake. And I just thought, oh, bullshit. There's a reason I don't remember his name. You know what I'm saying?
Let's land the plane there, Chase.
That's the narcissistic level. And so anyway, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Ultimately, get in a thrive mindset instead of a survive mindset. And don't let anything external to yourself impact your self-esteem, because you're going to need it when there's nothing else left. And that's going to be what gets you through when everybody else gives up. And that's going to be when you're going to have the old pie, whole cake for yourself on the other side. Thanks, Jim.
Throw a 5 in the chat for Chase Geiser. Let's go. Thank you, Chase. Everybody, have a wonderful Friday, wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back Monday morning with Brock himself. See ya.